don't let the fear of other people hold you back.
I love that. When you fail forward. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Bridging Divides podcast, where we bring you the advice, tools, and resources that you need to build the bridge to success in your career, business, or just in your life in general. Super excited to bring our guest here today, Lynn Ruby. We're super excited to have you. Just to give a little intro on her, she is the founder and CEO of the Ruby Marketing Agency for 10 years. Which is impressive. I don't know if I've ever stuck to anything for that long. So you're already like way up here for me. You've spoken to thousands from the stage, sang at the Kennedy Center with the National Symphony, and you're on the board of directors for the Grammy Award-winning Phoenix Chorale. So Lynn is my spirit animal. She's who I want to be when I grow up. I don't know if I'll ever grow up. I'll get older.
I hope you don't.
Yeah, I don't think that I'll ever.
No.
That's my parents will attest to the fact that I probably will never grow up. But we're so happy to have you, Lynn. I'm so excited. I mean, from the first time that we met, I was just like, oh my gosh. So I saw her speaking at a networking event, and just everything that was coming out of your mouth, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exactly just vibing with everything that I'm trying to create, and everything that everything that I believe, kind of how business should work, and so it was just awesome. I'm so glad that we're here.
Well, I'm excited to be here. That was like an instant connection for us, wasn't it?
I know.
Some people you just click with, and that's what happened that particular day. So we've been buddies ever since.
It was so funny too, because I sat next to her because the person that I came with, I thought that they knew each other. And
we did not.
And then you did. It turns out that you didn't even know each other.
No.
And so it was just like one of those perfect moments that. Actually, it's funny, in the questions that I sent you and the answers, one of those things kind of happens in one of your stories, where you're in a place where you didn't necessarily expect to be, and then it totally changed everything. So we'll get to that. So it's a good story.
Okay.
It's a good story. So yeah, hopefully we can share that one. But yeah, we'll dive right in. So the first question I asked, was, what's a fun fact? And you had a fun story, which again, I'm reading the story to my wife as I'm reading the answers that you gave, and she was in orchestra growing up. I was in choir. Music is a huge part of our lives. Mm-hmm. I was just working on a song that I'm writing yesterday, and so it's like it's very much a part of who we are. And so this is a fun story, and I'll let you take the reins.
And you don't even know the end of it yet.
I know. You said to be continued, and I was like, right. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to wait till tomorrow. But yeah, please.
This is a classic story. So I started playing the violin when I was 5 years old. I was plucked out of kindergarten because of some aptitude test that said that I would be great at the violin. So I started playing violin at the age of 5 and continued playing all the way through high school until I became too vain as a young woman and wanted to grow my nails, and you can't play the violin with nails.
So that's why I don't play the violin.
So that's why.
Yeah.
So anyway, at about middle school, I was, you're 6th, 7th, or 8th grade, you're 13, 14 years old. Very awkward stage of life, very self-conscious stage of life, of course, for all of us, right? It's never easy. And I was in school orchestra, and one day, the orchestra was assigned to play in the middle of the afternoon for a lovely ladies' luncheon. And so we all went to school, and we went to first period, we went to second period, and then we got out to play, and we were going to this ladies' luncheon to entertain them with our school orchestra. I'm sure they were thrilled. You know how school orchestras sound.
Yeah, they're like, this is going to be fantastic.
Anyway, we were supposed to bring our uniforms with us, our orchestra uniforms, which consisted of a beautiful polyester long-sleeve white blouse, very heavy, a beautiful navy blue polyester, very thick vest, and a navy blue polyester, very thick, long-to-the-floor skirt. And of course, I brought all of those things, but what I neglected to bring was pantyhose and heels. So I decided, well, I have a long skirt, nobody can see, I'm just going to wear what I had on that day at school, which just happened to be bright yellow checkered knee socks and black and white saddle shoes.
Oh, that's fun. And this is where the story ended.
Yes.
Like, this is all you gave me. So I'm like, you're like, I'll finish it. And I'm like,
So we get on the bus, we're in our uniforms, we're carrying our instruments, we get on the bus, I'm hiding my legs under the seat so nobody can see my bright yellow knee socks and saddle shoes. We get to the venue, which is a lovely country club atmosphere, and ladies who lunch are sitting in tables eating, and clink, clink, clink of the glasses and the forks and the spoons. And there was a riser, about a 3-foot riser, for the orchestra. So we all piled up there and found our seats and found our chairs to play for these lovely ladies at their luncheon. And I was positioned in such a way that I couldn't see the conductor. So I started to scoot my chair, and I scooted it back, and I scooted it back, and I scooted it back so far that the 2 legs went onto the floor, and I flipped over. My legs went up in the air.
Oh my gosh.
I fell into the bass player and fell into his instrument. The entire room went silent, and everybody was focused on me. And I couldn't get up. So I'm laying there with the yellow knee socks and the saddle shoes. So
totally upended.
Totally
just
upended.
Like...
It made me think of Mary Catherine Gallagher from Saturday Night Live.
Oh my
So
goodness.
that was my humiliation. I don't remember actually what happened after that.
You've repressed it.
I think I've repressed it. But needless to say, I survived, and it's a great story to tell now.
Oh, that is so good. Oh my goodness. Yeah, my stories in choir consisted of me always pulling some sort of antic. I remember, and this is not something that I advise, I had put a wire into the electrical outlet.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah. As a 10th grader would do. Very smart. Actually, I think it was 11th grade. Old enough to where I should have known better. And so I was like, oh, it didn't do anything because I only stuck it in one side. So I was like, I wonder what will happen, And then it exploded, and I've got black all over my hands, and it shorted out. Oh man, yeah. I went to the principal for that one. That was
yeah. I think you should have.
That was dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah. That principal was so great though. I came in and he's like, "What are you here for?" Which he'd seen me several times before. Come to find out, my parents were like, "Oh yeah, you almost got expelled several times." And I was like, "I have no idea." He was a great guy though, so he's like, "What happened?" He's like, "I did something stupid." And he's like, "Oh, I want to hear something stupid." And then he told me some story. And he's like, "Oh yeah, what are you here for?" And I told him, I was like, "Yeah, that was stupid." So yours is not due to your.
It was not
your
intentional.
Own,
it wasn't planned, but yes, it was quite
I was
humiliating.
I was very accident prone because I loved trying to figure things out, and I'm very much a ready, fire, aim, which you know from our many conversations before this interview that is definitely how I operate. So that's luckily I have all my fingers. A little less feeling in this one, but all right. So the bulk of the episode is where we talk about what divide your bridging. And ultimately that is why I wanted to talk to you, because that's what this is all about, right? Giving people the advice, tools, and resources to be able to overcome the challenges that they have, whether it's in their career, their business that they're growing, or just in their life in general. And a lot of times those intertwine. It's very hard to separate the business or the career from your personal life. And I think that when we try, a lot of times we feel a lot of pressure from one to the other. And it can just feel so overwhelming and horrible. And so I loved hearing your story, and just as over time as we've gotten to know each other, just kind of seeing what has shaped you into who you are. Because you and I, as we know, we have a lot of similarities. We even took the Kolbe A, excuse me. Yeah, here shows how much I know. So the Kolbe A, is it a personality assessment? It's an
assessment of how you actually take action or don't.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
We got the exact same
score.
score.
And only 5% of any individuals have a particular score.
Which is why I say she's my spirit animal, because she is where I'm like, okay, what do I need to stop doing right now to be able to get to where she is, and what do I need to start doing? And so I'm so excited. So with Bridging Divides, we have the method to success, the 5 building blocks of what I call the bridge strategy. So whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, you follow this bridge strategy, you follow these building blocks, and you can make sure that you get to success, that finish line, the other side of the bridge, if you will. And so we'll go through those, and then I'll kind of give a little brief explanation as to what each of those 5 are. But I want to see how you have applied those principles in what you have done and how you've gotten to where you are. So starting with your mission, I went through several of these points because you have a marketing company.
Right.
You have clients that,
Right.
that come to you when they're trying to figure out how to get their message across. Describe how did you get into it? What does that entail? Which, you and I, you're my marketing person. We made a business plan and everything, which is amazing, by the way. Definitely reach out to her for that. But give, kind of explain a little bit about what goes into that, and why it's so important.
Your question that you posed really made me think, which is awesome, right?
Good.
So the question, how are you, meaning me, how am I bridging divides? And when I think of that, and when you and I talked about it, to me it's like, okay, bringing people together who have vastly different opinions or vastly different cultures or vastly different ways of thinking.
Yes.
And I thought, I don't do that. So how can I bridge divides? And I thought more and more about it, and I realized that in my business, I have a marketing agency. Okay, what does that mean? That means a whole bunch of technical things. That means websites and social media and email and messaging and marketing and search engine optimization, all of these technical aspects that you can just apply to a business, and you should apply to a business, and you're done, and that's great. But that is not exactly, we do that, but that's not the totality of what we do, because I realized what I'm doing, what my company is doing, is we have clients who, and they all are attracted to me and vice versa. I'm not attracted to the ones who just want, this and that done.
I don't have a lot of people attracted to me.
No.
So, I don't know what that's like.
But there are so many people out there with such great messages and ideas and products and services to bring to the world, whether it's health or whether it's funeral homes or whether it's some type of medical service or whether even it's an insurance company, who are approaching things from a vastly different way, and they want to change people's lives through their own expertise.
Right.
What often happens, however, is that they get so caught up in how wonderful their thing is and the weeds that it entails and the details and all of that, that they lose sight of how to share it with the world.
Yeah, they're so close to one aspect of like the painting that they can't come back here and see the big picture. Yeah.
And they may have a vague idea that, I need to do this and this and this, but they're not quite sure how to do it or which things to do to reach the right audience. And so the bridge that we divide is working with these companies.
The divide you bridge. You don't want to
divide
the bridge. Yeah, no, definitely not.
So the divide we bridge.
Yeah, please go on. Sorry.
Thank you.
Cut you
The divide we bridge is to bring a plan to them with messaging and the right tools and the right techniques and the right technology so that their important work reaches the right audience and changes the lives that they want to change.
No, I love that. And I love that, all of those things, SEO and marketing and videos and social media and all of those things, like those are great, but those are only tools to accomplish what it is that you're trying to do. I was talking to my wife, as I do quite a bit.
That's good.
At least we like to talk to each other. But one of the things I was saying is that when what you're doing becomes a way to enrich the world around you, then all of those things, they don't become the focus, they just become the method in which you enrich the lives around you.
Exactly.
And so and I have found for me, just in my personal journey, that if I am not doing something to enrich myself or to enrich the lives around me, I'm not living. I'm just waiting to die, which is ironic, being in a funeral home. So this is where your husband,
My husband
works,
right.
And we will get into that, but that's another good story. But if we're not seeking to better the world around us or the world that we live in, then we're not alive. It's meaningless.
It is.
It's, you know, and it's as somebody who has struggled with depression and suicidal thoughts and, you know, that sort of a thing, it's been very difficult for me to be like, why am I working? Why am I trying to get money? Is it just to pay another bill, to do another thing and just go around the hamster wheel? Or is it to genuinely find meaning in the life that I'm living? You know, we weren't put here, I sincerely believe, that we were not put on this earth to just go through the motions. We are here to learn. We are here to build relationships with people and grow into better versions of ourselves.
Absolutely. And that's why when I say the clients we have also have that mindset.
Yes.
Our clients, if I've ever had a client whose mindset was purely, I want to make money, that's all I want to do. I didn't work with them for very long, if at all, and they didn't work with me for very long at all, because it just is not a connection, and I'm not interested in furthering that mindset at all.
No, which is one of the reasons why I love the entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, there's a lot of things, but one of the benefits, I think, to being an entrepreneur is that you have that power and that freedom to control your environment.
Exactly.
There are a lot of times when we're in a job, and if you can find a job where they respect you and they value you and they seek to build you up, then that's amazing. That's great. I mean, I think that's what all businesses should be. But one of the great things about being an entrepreneur is that you can decide who to let in and who not.
Exactly.
You know, and who you can kindly show the door
yes.
when you figure out that you're not
That's
connected.
Right.
But no, and so I love that. And you know, like you were saying, you might not think, like you hear about a marketing agency and they're like, how are they making the world a better place? How are they, whatever. But you laid it out perfectly, is that anybody who has a message that wants to share who they are, what they have to share, you have to be able to get that to the people that they want to reach.
Absolutely.
You know, if you're not going to change the lives you want to change if you can't make the connection.
Exactly.
And that is where you come
That's
in.
what we do.
And I love that. That's so beautiful. So getting into how you have built this business that you have and how you've come to where you are now, you shared some amazing stories and breakthroughs and things that you've overcome to get there. So the first building block of the bridge strategy is blueprint. You can't build something if you don't know where to go. It's all about coming up with a plan, the right goals, the right strategy, and then also what are the beliefs, the limiting beliefs that are getting in the way, you know, that ultimately will prevent you from getting there. It's to give you clarity. You know, a lot of times, and there are plenty of books that have mentioned something like this. So it's not like I'm like super smart or anything. I've never been accused of being the smartest guy in the room. But people don't lack motivation or passion a lot of times. They lack clarity.
Yes.
In a lot of ways, which is something that you provide, which again, I love. But the blueprint is all about getting that clarity, cleaning out the clutter, and really getting a good blueprint, hence the name. So the question here is, what limiting beliefs have you overcome to be able to be where you're at, this dynamic, speaking in front of thousands and performing and singing? How did you get there? What of those limiting beliefs did you overcome?
Oh my goodness. So it's when I think of where I was as that young middle schooler with their legs in the air. At that same time, the personality that I had then and the personality that I have now are so different. I never could have imagined how I would change, because at that stage of my life, when I was very, very young, I was extraordinarily quiet. I hardly ever opened my mouth. At home, at school, with friends. And people would often say to me, "You are so quiet." And here's a tip. Never say that to somebody who is quiet, because it will not open them up. I guarantee you. It just closes them down more.
Don't point out somebody's
Don't
insecurities.
point out somebody's insecurities.
That's not going to help them overcome
No.
it. Oh, that's interesting.
Isn't it? Yeah. I heard that before.
Good notes.
Yeah.
Good lesson.
So to think that now I've spoken in front of thousands, I've sung at the Kennedy Center, it's like, how did that, I don't know. I do know that I worked tirelessly through personal thoughts, through reading books, through going to classes, through meeting with other people and sharing ideas. And it took a long time for me to realize, because my belief was, well, nobody wants to hear what I have to say. I have nothing worthwhile to say. There's nothing that could come out of my mouth that's anything coherent, or I cannot add to the conversation. Nobody wants to hear my opinion.
Yeah.
That was my internal belief that was so deeply ingrained, and I still don't know really where that came from. But that was what it was. And so working on that again and again and again and again and again finally has vastly improved that. But I will tell you that it actually never went away, because I still have that limiting belief that crops up every now and then.
Those
Even
internal
then, it
demons
still
that-
comes. So I encourage people not to be discouraged when you've worked so hard to get rid of some limiting beliefs and they're still there. But now they're like, now I realize, oh, there you are, little friend. Yeah, you go away. I know you've been with me a long time, but your work is done, and whatever you had to say is okay, but we're not going to take that in or believe that any longer.
No, I love that. So I'm a super huge superhero nerd. Really, just a lot of nerds, and I'm a lot of nerds in a lot of things. But one of my favorite quotes from Doctor Strange, I don't know if you've seen that movie. It's fantastic. Is that when he's learning, he's going through these things.
I've not seen that movie.
But when he's going through these, the person, the guru, whoever, tells him that you never get rid of your demons, you only learn to live above them. Mm-hmm. And I just find that that's so true, because I think in a lot of ways those negative, what we would view as negative experiences, and they get us to a certain point.
They do. They're there for a reason.
Yeah, they serve a purpose to an extent, but we have to make sure that we don't give them more power than they deserve.
Right.
Or to recognize when you get to a place like, okay, that does not serve me anymore. I need to move on. Mm-hmm. You know, and so I love that. And I think that there's definitely a great point to be made about it takes effort. You know, it's not just something that you can just shrug off a lot of times.
It's not just going to go away on its own.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't just say don't. What happens when you don't want to think about a pink elephant, right?
Right.
You think about a pink elephant because you're like, don't think, and then that's what you think about. So you have to replace it with something else, you know. And so I love that you talk about constantly reading and developing, getting out of your comfort zone. One of the things that I thought that was great that you pointed out in the answers that you gave me was that you taught what you were trying to learn.
Yes. Isn't that interesting?
Which is great, because you and I, it's so funny because our personalities are so similar, but I was not the quiet kid. I was not the one who kept my mouth shut.
Yeah.
It was, please shut your mouth more. You know, the teachers were always like, look, can you please get your kid to shut his mouth? And I didn't realize too, and what's funny is that my mom was like, you're a great leader. And I was like, well, I don't want to lead. I just want to like screw around and whatever. But the thing is that what I realized was that I was getting people to follow. It wasn't to do the best thing. We weren't paying attention to class or anything. But I did realize that was something that, you know, my demon was the one that told me to always open my mouth at the inopportune times, right? But
we would have been interesting together in a room at that point in time.
Yes, but what was interesting, though, is that one of the things, again, you talked about bringing people together that are vastly different. That has always been something that I have longed to do. One of the things that I am obsessed with, because I do get obsessive about a lot of things, but is connection. I like to connect with people. whether they believe vastly different things than I do, or if two cultures are vastly different in whatever way it is, I like to bridge that divide and bring them together. And so it's funny that you mentioned that, because that is one of the overall kind of missions of what it is that I'm doing with Bridging Divides. But I always liked to find the quiet kid and learn their name.
Yeah. Good
Because
for you.
thank you, what I realized was that there's power in finding something that somebody does connect with, their name, part of who they are, part of their identity. And when you can identify that, and when you can praise it, when you can put it on a pedestal, not in a fake way, it has to be genuine for it to actually break through that barrier. But when you can find that aspect about that person and recognize it and highlight it, and in the case of the more quiet individuals, find a more subtle way of praising that, then you see them light up. And I always, it was almost like a drug, to find that person that I could connect to, and that they finally see them kind of break out of that shell, I think, that we all have to some extent.
I'll tell you one thing that
Yeah.
was actually a great benefit of that period of my life was I learned to be a very, very good listener and remember what I heard and not only hear what people say, but hear the meaning and the feeling behind what they have to say.
I love that.
Because sitting and
I love
observing
that.
without talking for so long a period of my life, I was able to see how people communicated, what they communicated, and remember certain things about different people, which enabled me then later to make connections.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. We just talked about two very different ways of approaching connection. I love that. And we actually, that's one of the other building blocks that we'll get into about using your unique strengths to accomplish what you're doing. But the next building block, if you will, is lay the first brick. That's all. This building block is, you've got your blueprint, you've got your plan, you've got the limiting beliefs that you know what to overcome, and you've also kind of established the affirmations and the mindsets that you're going to replace it with. But next comes the actual implementation. You have to find a way to kind of summon that drive to be able to take that first step forward. And there's a lot of different techniques and habit formation. There's a lot of books on that. One that I'm reading right now is Atomic Habits by James Clear. Have you read that one?
No, but I've heard of that one.
Man, it's fascinating. I love it. At any rate, this one is this building block is all about how bridges are built from two sides. You do need somebody else in order to accomplish your goal. If it's a business, you need a client. Sometimes you need a partner, you need an investor, you need whatever. But bridges are built from both sides, but you have to lay the first brick. You cannot wait for them to come to you to tell you to start. You have to do that. And so the question here is, how have you taken initiative in starting your business and overcoming these fears? And we talked a little bit about it, but how have you taken initiative to be able to move forward?
That's an interesting question, knowing also both of our Colby A profiles.
Yes.
Because our profiles are, the first thing we do for anything is take action. And then we figure out the plan later.
Ready, fire,
We figure out, exactly. We figure it out as we go. And used to be ashamed of that, or kind of like, oh, that's not a good thing, or I shouldn't do it that way. Yes. And then after, understanding my Colby profile and reading more about it and getting a grasp of it, I was like, oh, that's the way I'm built.
Yes.
And I'm not alone in that, and it works for me. It works for me. That's not the way it works for everybody.
Someone who knows you a lot better than you know yourself designed you that way.
Right. And so I remember when I was in college, after high school, I went to college A in year 1, and then I went to college B in year 2, and I went to college B without visiting.
This sounds so familiar.
And I just went and signed up and went to classes, and then I figured out if I liked it or not. And then I went to college, number 3, in year 3. Same thing, I didn't visit it. And one was in North Carolina, one was in Texas, one was in Oregon, so I got to see all different, yes.
Those are literally here,
all
here.
over the place. And I had a blast. Until I finally realized, well, this isn't really getting me anywhere.
Yeah, without direction, I've fallen into that same trap.
So then, I made a decision and did some things in that direction. But my point is that, and I also would just travel wherever I wanted to go on vacation by myself and make friends where I went. Isn't that kind of the opposite of my quiet personality earlier? But I wasn't afraid to just take action and do it alone. And if people wanted to come with me, fantastic. But I wasn't going to wait around for people to come with me in order to give myself permission to do what it is that I wanted to do.
And that's an interesting dichotomy of you being, very quiet and reserved, but then also at this same time having this fearless kind of aspect to who you are.
Right.
That's fascinating.
Right. Very independent spirit.
Yeah.
Yep. So when starting my business, I just started it, and I learned as I went, and I met the right people as I went, and I learned the right clients as I went, and that it was in a field that I loved and that I liked to deal with people with. So that was the laying the first brick. You just lay it.
Yeah, you just go.
You just lay it.
And I think it's funny because like for me it's like I'm all initiative, and there's I have a hard sometimes one of the things I run into is being able to follow up or continue or whatever. It's like I get another shiny object and I go for it. Which one of the benefits of having the podcast and this channel is that I get to pursue a lot of the shiny things. If I find somebody that has a business where we really identify together, but it's not really something that I'm wanting to go into, I can talk to them.
Right.
I can
learn about it.
Find a way to dip my toe into it and really get to know it. So that's fantastic. I love that. Hey guys, just want to take a quick break and say if you guys are getting any value from this, if you guys are enjoying it, having a good time with us today, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. Everybody says that, I know, but hey, can't beat them, join it. Just want to let you guys also know about our newsletter that we have coming out. It'll let you know about all the latest and greatest news that we've got, anything Bridging Divides related, all the events that we've got coming up, all of the different organizations, nonprofits out there that are doing awesome, amazing things that you can also be a part of. It'll also let you know about the book that I've got coming out, The Bridge Strategy. Super, super excited about that. And we'll let you know when that gets released. We'll also let you know about any additional nuggets of information and inspiration that we've got, different fun stories that we don't necessarily mention in these videos or episodes. So if that's something that interests you, then check it out in the description and we'll make you part of the Bridging Divides family. Excited to have you here. We'll get back into it. And that's a perfect segue into the next building block, which is lean in. Lean into who you are, lean into the strengths that you have. And you talked about how you used your strengths to take initiative in your own unique way. Excuse me, I keep coughing. And I love that. And we both talked about how you used your strengths of being more reserved and listening, and then there's mine where I'm this big, kind of personality, and I'm always talking, I'm always getting to know people, and we both found a way to use those strengths to accomplish the same thing, which was connection. Mm-hmm. And so, kind of piggybacking off of that, how have you used some of your other strengths to accomplish what it is that you have set out to accomplish, that goal that you have?
So I talked about, which I consider one of my superpowers, is listening. Coupled with the ability to see this person's perspective as well as that person's perspective.
I wonder if that comes from being able to just kind of be quiet and observe.
Probably,
And
yeah.
so you're like, okay, well, I'll take this,
Yeah,
I'll take
I get
this.
that, and then, oh yeah, I get
Then
that.
you kind of, oh, I love that.
So then when it comes to, there's this thing in marketing that happens where there's a when digital marketing, there's a technical side and there's an emotional side to marketing.
Yes.
And they're often in conflict because the way you need to do something technically to make it correct and accurate and make it work sometimes doesn't accomplish the emotional side, and vice versa.
Right.
And so I do have this unique ability to be able to see, okay, I understand, Mr. and Ms. Technical person, that we need to build this thing this way.
Yeah.
Yet I also see that we need to make this connection on an emotional level. And so we need to tweak the technical part a little bit and tweak the emotional part a little bit so that we can meet in the middle and make this an effective program or product or project.
It's beautiful.
And so connecting those two things is, because, you know, I like to learn here, but I don't want to get deep in the weeds with the technical stuff. I don't want to get deep in the weeds with the emotion, but I'm able to connect the two.
Which is one of the things that we have in common. We like to just, over here,
Right.
over here. We don't like to really get
Right.
into details. But one of the things that that I thought was great, and from our strategy day that we had together when we were coming up with my marketing plan and all the other stuff back when we did that, was you had this amazing ability to be able to take all of this kind of stuff that I taught, because I just talk, and a lot of times that's great because I can get a lot out there, and then I can kind of hone it down and kind of pick the valuable parts instead of just the rambling. But you were able to take all of that and be like, okay, wait, that real quick that you just said, let's rein it in and let's focus it.
Yes.
Which is an interesting term, to rein in. It's not holding back, say, the horse or whatever, but it's channeling the energy, channeling what it is to be able to go forward to accomplish what it is. And so that was an amazing strength that I noticed. And another thing was to anticipate kind of what questions I had based off of what I was expressing, what I was feeling. And so I think that just kind of piggyback off of that, being able to find those, be right in the middle of the technical side and the emotional side. You did that with myself. When I had both this technical idea and the emotional idea, you were able to kind of incorporate those to ultimately come up with that plan to be able to.
I remember specifically a few times saying, wait a minute, stop, repeat what you just said and write it down.
Yeah, because that's the important part.
Yes.
And one of the reasons I think that collaborating together is so important is because the expertise that you have is not something that I've been privy to. I haven't been there. Kayla, who's behind the camera over here making us look good. The reason why I brought her on is because I don't have the expertise of filming and editing and producing all of this, and so collaborating with other people, I think, is so important with that regard. Not life is not a competition; it's a collaboration.
Exactly.
Nobody gets to the end of their life and is like, I got here first.
Yes.
It's like, congratulations, you died first. Like what? People get on their deathbed or whatever, and you hear so many people that say, I wish that I had made more meaningful relationships. I wish that I had worked together with people more. And so I think that that's very important to remember. But that leads perfectly to the fourth brick, which is complete their bridge. Which this one is all about not going around and finding who can complete my bridge, who can give me what I need, what I want. It's all about finding other people and finding out what their needs are, and then how can you bring value to them. And in turn, once that bridge is complete, bridges go both ways. And so by you giving, say, a customer what they need, or a client, where you listen genuinely, which, again, great superpower to have, a super hearing, I'll call it. But being able to have that is so vital, because when you genuinely and authentically listen to what somebody else is saying, then you can find out what they need. Instead of just talking, you're not going to be able to find out what they need. And so you're just going to be talking at a brick wall because they're like, I don't relate to anything that you're saying. Right. And so the question here is, and I can kind of anticipate a little bit of what you're saying, because marketing is very much this way with what you've shared already. But how has anticipating and fulfilling other people's needs, or being more interested in fulfilling their needs, benefited you and accomplished your goals?
So if we think back just a little bit to the limiting beliefs that I shared.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to hear what I have to say. I have nothing worth saying.
Which, oh my gosh, what a detriment. I mean, that's gonna stop you right there from the beginning.
Right. Well, I eventually learned that I do have something important to say, and people do want to hear it. And I also learned that when you couple that with my superpower of listening, I have learned that when I'm working with a client, and I get this gut feeling that there's something that they're not saying, or there's something that I'm not saying, or there's something that the team isn't pointing out that's a big red flag about something. And when I discount my gut feeling and say, oh, that's ridiculous. They know what they're talking about. They know what they're doing. I'm not going to say anything. Every time I have said nothing, whatever it was that I feared happened.
Wow, yeah, that's...
And so, one thing I've learned to build that connection with others is to say what it is that my gut is telling me I need to say, and to say it immediately. Because the longer you let it fester inside of you and the longer you think about it, the more you're going to convince yourself that it needs not to be said.
Oh, yeah.
And so I've learned to say it immediately, and the fact that it might hurt somebody's feelings or it might be a criticism of what they're doing or what they're saying, we need to put that to the side, because the gut feeling that I have that I need to say something about is going to benefit them in the long run.
No, I love that. I love that so much. And also, I think that being able to have that ability to genuinely and authentically listen to them, you can find a way to make sure that the environment is such that when you do bring that up, you're not insulting them. You're not discounting their idea or their passion or their mission.
You really have their best interest.
But you have their best interest. And so if they can see that, it's the adage, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Mm-hmm.
That caring, that relationship has to come first in order to be able to say, okay, I hear what you're saying and I love it, but this is what we need.
That's why the listening part first is important.
100%.
Because if you jump into it and just say, oh, you're doing this wrong and this wrong and this wrong, I can see it.
Like, why would I want to listen to you?
Yeah.
100%.
They need to know that they're hurt
No,
first.
I love that. And again, that is exactly, it exactly embodies that fourth building block. So the last building block, which, I mean, there's a reason why it's last, and that's where everything kind of culminates, is reinforce and review. You have to look back on the work that you've accomplished, on the relationship that you've built, on the connections you've established, and see and analyze what has worked and what hasn't. Mm-hmm. You know, being able to objectively kind of remove yourself, I think, is that's also a very big superpower. Instead of going, kind of spiraling in some of the failures and the mistakes and the trip-ups, I think is very, very important. Instead of viewing those stumbling blocks as stumbling blocks, you view them as stepping stones, almost. It's like, oh, I tripped over that. Hey, we need to work on that. We need to reinforce that, or we need to get rid of it altogether and replace it with something new. And so, how have you, or more rather, what mistakes have you made in this journey, and how have you learned from those mistakes so that we can also avoid them or learn from them as well?
A lot of mistakes. I don't think anyone can accomplish anything without making a lot of mistakes.
I love hearing that. I absolutely love hearing that.
I often hear the phrase, fail and fail fast. In other words...
that is good.
Yes, fail fast, because you want to take action on your idea and you want to find out as quickly as possible why it's not working. Or if it will never work at all, or because you don't want to spend time, money, resources going down and pursuing something that is ultimately
emotional energy.
Exactly.
Oh, it's so exhausting.
So that's one lesson that I have learned the hard way often, is I'll often dig my teeth in and say, no, this is going to work. This is going to work the way I think it's going to work. And I've learned to take the me out of it. Okay, it's not me. It's this thing that is either going to work or it's not going to work, and maybe it needs to be adjusted, maybe it needs to not be done at all, but it's not personal. It's not personal. And so...
Yeah, you don't have to take it so hard.
No.
To be like, this doesn't work.
Right.
I love that.
And the other lesson that that has held me back, that I've learned to overcome, and is that really nobody is paying that much attention to you anyway.
If you think of like the billions of people.
We are so self-conscious, and we think every little thing we do is noticed by everybody, and in fact, they're all focused on themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like we are. So don't worry about making mistakes. Don't worry about failing. You're not going to die from, failure. You're going to learn from it. And so not being afraid of that, and realizing that, in general, the people that you love especially are very forgiving, and whatever you fail at, they're going to help you get back up on your feet as well.
Yeah, no, I heard there was this religious leader, Gordon B. Hinckley was his name, and he was talking about basically doing things, so getting out there. And he said the vast majority of people, aren't going to see what you do.
Exactly.
And those that do, only half of them are going to care.
Exactly.
And of those half that care, and they have, negative things to say, they don't matter.
No, they don't.
So if you really think about it, it's like, just get out there.
We are free to do what we want to do, what our talents compel us to do, what our passions compel us to do, and don't let the fear of other people hold you back.
I love that. When you fail forward.
Yes.
That's another phrase.
Yes.
There's all sorts of idioms and great sayings to help us remember that. So just to kind of wrap this up, because we talked about such amazing things and just so many great nuggets of information. And honestly, I do this mainly for me. I mean, this is very, very selfish.
How fun for you,
because,
right?
And I was talking to my wife. I was like, this is fantastic. Because instead of screwing up my kids with all the crappy advice I give them, I can just collect advice from all of the experts. And so I don't have to screw them up. She's like, please find more people to interview. She's like, please keep this going. But just to kind of wrap it up, I kind of wanted, the last couple things I want to talk about is, you mentioned constantly reading. And I love learning, and which is another thing that I've kind of realized more about myself, because school isn't really like the format that I learn in a lot, because I get very distracted, and but I am constantly reading, constantly learning. Just on the way over here, I was listening to a book at double speed, because I want to get as much in as I can, and move on to the next one. But what books have you read? I mean, there's thousands of them. But what are a few of them that you have read? And you mentioned them to me, and you said you're going to kind of go in a little bit more detail as to why. But what are some of them that have been instrumental to you that both our listeners, viewers, and I can look into?
So I have a very diverse little list of books.
Yeah.
I was a voracious reader as a kid. I used to read so fast, a book a day. I mean, just the classics, everything.
And you can tell by using the word voracious.
I also love words.
So do I.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I used to read, this is an aside, I used to read Time magazine from cover to cover with a dictionary by my side, and every word that I read that I did not understand, I looked up and started using it in sentences, because I love words.
How old were you when you did that?
That was college.
Oh,
yeah.
See, from growing up, my dad would have like a word a day.
There you go.
And so even as kids, we're using like the word plethora, and our teachers are like,
yes.
what the heck? Like, where is this coming from?
I read, voraciously as a kid.
Yeah.
And I used to sit up in a tree and read, actually. My mother would have to call me down for dinner.
I love you so much. Oh my gosh. Everything that you said. Please go on.
Anyway, recently, just in the past year or two, I decided to reread a lot of the classics. And I reread Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights, Rebecca, My Cousin Rachel, Northanger Abbey, all of these books written by females in like that 18th, 19th century time frame. And they are not easy reads. They are very complicated sentences, and they are very well structured. And the pictures that they paint, the pictures that these authors paint, are just beautiful. And I also started thinking, you know what, these women at that period of time, as women, they were not encouraged to be authors, number one. Number two, they were sitting down with a piece of paper and a quill pen and ink and writing these very complicated, very long novels by hand. How awesome is that? How awesome were they? And so I read those with a whole great new appreciation
I love
of
that.
what they went through and the pictures that they would draw with and the people that they would describe. It was fascinating. So that's one genre that...
Jane Austen is actually one of my favorite
Oh,
authors.
is that right?
Yeah.
Oh.
I have a very eclectic variety of books that I like to read. But I love Pride and Prejudice. I mean, it's one of my favorites, the way that she pictures paints the picture, and it's just so beautifully done.
It is beautifully done. And then to switch gears,
Yeah.
I've read tons of business books, and I have grown tired of reading business books because I find they repeat themselves over and over and over again in different ways with different names and different hooks.
Slap a different label on it.
Yes. However, one book I've recently read that really affected me was one called Essentialism by Greg McKeown.
Okay.
I think I'm saying his name correctly. But his whole theme of that book is that and this really resonated with me because I tend not to do what he recommends, which is pick one direction and go full force in that direction versus this direction, this direction, this direction, this direction, this direction.
Yes.
And because we have limited time, there's no getting around that.
Right.
You're only going to make so much progress if you have 10, 20, 30 things that you're trying to accomplish rather than picking one, and you can go all the way with that one.
Yeah.
So I often think of that when it comes to my business, when it comes to my personal life, and let those other smaller things fall away that are not as important to you in accomplishing your goals.
I love that. That's such an amazing principle. And yeah, no, I'm going to have to add that to my list of books to read, as we all should.
And then there's one more book I wanted to share.
Please.
Yes, because this is fascinating. I recently read this. It's called The Fourth Turning. Actually, the total name is The Fourth Turning, What the Cycles of History Tell Us About America's Next Rendezvous with Destiny.
Longest title ever.
Yes. This book was written in 1995, so it's pretty old for a book of this nature. And I can't believe that I never heard of it until recently. It is a very challenging read. I had to read some things 3, 4, 5 times before I understood what the heck he was trying to say.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating about the cycles of history. He goes all the way back to before the Reformation, about how as history progresses, we go through 4 cycles of change, and they repeat and repeat and repeat, regardless of who's living at that time, regardless of how advanced we are as a society. It is fascinating.
That's so cool.
There's 4 cycles that each have a name, and they go in that same pattern over and over again. We are currently in the 4th turning, and in, I guess, July, yes, he has a new book coming out called The 4th Turning is Here. So I have that book scheduled to ship to me from Amazon as soon as
you're ready to go.
it is. But it is worth, I couldn't get through it all, frankly, before I had to return it to the library. But
what's a library?
Yeah.
Does anyone even know the library?
And it's fascinating. It will change the way you think about the world and about society.
I love that, and I what you just said there I think is so important in general, because going back to something that you said before about being so stuck in the weeds, so stuck in our own sphere that we don't see kind of outside of that. I think that it is so important to have the world that you live in challenged. And I don't know, that might not be a very popular belief, whether it's a social belief, a political belief, a religious belief. If you don't challenge those perceptions, then how can you truly say that that's what you choose, that that's what you follow?
Right.
If you don't challenge it and go, no, that is what I believe, and you strengthen, you reaffirm it. It's the whole reinforce and review, right? Or if you go, no, that needs to change. No, I love that. Thank you for that. Now, this last section is what I love to end on, because positivity is like my number one thing. With anything that's made, there's like a hailstorm, and you have these like baseball-sized pieces of hail that are pelting me in the face, and I'm like smiling through it, But that's not necessarily what positivity is. I think a lot of times it's baring your teeth and moving forward. The smile's more of a grimace as you're marching through, knowing that that the fight is worth fighting. Positivity prize fighter, that term comes from, you don't lose a prize fight by getting knocked down, you lose by staying down. And positivity is having the strength and grit and determination to get back up, spit the blood out, and keep fighting because you know and believe that that fight is worth fighting. So what has been one of your experiences that has been one of those times where you just felt almost KO'd, knocked out, on your butt, I'm never going to be able to get back up and keep fighting, but you did anyway, and what came from it?
I really appreciated this question because I think when you're going through something, you don't realize maybe until you look back on it how it was positive in the end. And my story, at least one of my stories, is such that I actually never wanted to get married. Again, that independent spirit. I remember asking my mother when I was 8 years old or so, do I have to get married? And she said, at 8, because I would see, I was like, do I have to? She said, no. And I was like, oh, good.
Marriage does not look like something I want to do.
At 8 years old. Anyway, no, I wasn't the typical planning my wedding with the white dress and the flowers kind of girl. And so, I was happy as a lark and about that answer, and grew up, started dating. I did love to date. I enjoyed, having companionship, having fun, and eventually I did meet someone, and we became engaged. And we had the venue, we had the ring, we had the dress ordered, we had the date set, May 9th. I'll never forget that date. And so here we go with the gut thing again. Again, in my gut, I knew it was not right. This was not the right person for me. It was not a good situation. But I had not yet learned to speak when I had that gut feeling, right? Mm-hmm. However, what pushed me was that I had to pay the rest of the money for the dress.
So you're like,
so I'm like, money versus, making a little bit of a fuss. So I finally did break it off, and it was very difficult. Ruined a lot of relationships, disappointed a lot of people, went into a deep, dark depression, thought, what am I doing with my life? Why am I here? Suicidal thoughts. The only thing that kept me going was, you have to get up and go to your job every day. They expect you to be there at a certain time, and you have to be dressed and showered and do your thing and then go home. So I would do that just on a daily basis, and then I would come home and I would just kind of get in bed and hide. And that went on for probably about a year. And eventually I came out of that just by putting one foot in front of the other, because I had to, because I had to eat, I had to live, and had suicidal thoughts, but I knew I would never go through any of those. But it was not pleasant to have, right?
Well, it's scary, too.
It's very scary. And so eventually came out of that, and I remember saying to my family, okay, I am going to be single the rest of my life, and I am pleased as punch about that, and here we go. And one day I was invited to go to a visitation for an individual who had passed, and this was for someone who I had known about 2 weeks and hardly met once or twice. And some friends asked me to go, invited me to go, and out of my mouth came yes. And I thought, why in the world
I
would
love
I
going
do
to
that?
funerals. I just show up at them
Funerals
sometimes.
are so fun. And this was like half an hour away, and there was no reason for me to be there. Yeah. And I was sitting in the chapel, much like this one, and I looked down the hall and wondering, what am I doing here? Why am I here? Let's find something to do. And I looked down the hall, and there was this guy standing there by the door in a suit and tie. And I said to myself, I am going to get him to ask me out. I know he wants to ask me out. What is that? So I walked down the hallway towards him, and I started to talk, and found out he was the funeral director. I didn't know that. And kept talking, and he said to me, I'm sure your friends are waiting for you. I don't want to monopolize any more of your time. And I said, no, they're not. And I kept talking.
Didn't let him get away.
And I was like, I know you want. And finally he said, well, this isn't quite appropriate, but would you like to go out sometime? And
thank you. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was like,
to get you
gosh,
to say that for
yes,
hour.
okay. And so I said yes. He called me up 2 days later. We went out on our first date on Halloween night with a funeral director. And
Very romantic. Did he show up in a hearse?
No.
That would have
no,
been so amazing.
And he asked me out the next day, and I went to his house. He grilled me chicken on the barbecue. I fell asleep on his couch watching football, and my thought as I fell asleep was, I'm home. And we've been married 29 years now. And I remember on my wedding day, my father was about to walk me down the aisle. The music is playing, and he said, "Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to do this? We can leave right now if you're not sure." And I said, "I am absolutely sure." And married him 29 years. And just a few weeks ago, my husband said, "Are you still sure?" And I said, "Absolutely." So
Oh, I love that.
just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
My heart, I'm just like, oh, I'm not crying over here. You know, it's like such an amazing story. I love that. But I think that that's so amazing, though. There were so many things in there that we could. I mean, we talk a whole other hour about putting one foot in front of the other, about not isolating when you feel depression and when you feel those suicidal thoughts, because you do have a tendency to want to hide.
You do.
Withdraw into the shell,
Yeah.
and that is where that will destroy you. And that's something that I've been through, and many people that I've talked to have been through, and it's surprising how many people of great success have gone through a period, if not actively go through, something like that as well.
And I think it's so important that we share those stories,
Yes.
because so many people have been through it, but there's still some shame attached to it. And the more we speak about it, the less shame there is, and the more realization there is that I'm not alone, and many, many people have gone through that as well.
Absolutely. And shame is the antithesis of growth. It will not happen. Because if you're looking at your life through a shame-based lens, you're not going to see the worth in improving. You're not even going to see that you have the ability to improve if you're viewing your life from that shame-based standpoint. So thank you for sharing that story. That is, and all of the things that you've been through. I know I have been uplifted and inspired. And I'm super excited to have this. I've got the episode now, you know. And everybody watching, you know, just as we wrap up, remember that when you fail forward. When you're having a hard time, when you're going through those those dark moments, find other people that will lift you up, that will help you move forward, and that will motivate you to be you. Lean into who you are. Lean into the strengths that you have to accomplish the amazing things that you can accomplish. And realize that you are what is amazing about what you have to say. People want to listen to you. People want to hear you, and they value you. Remember, it's not just business, it's all personal. Everything that you do. I love you guys, and keep being amazing. See you around.